Hi, I'm Cameron Bonsi. I'm the Vice President of Marketing with Coast Domain Brands, and I'm here with farmer Steph. And Steph, today, well, first off, how are you?
Hi, Cameron. I'm great. I'm great because you know this, I just got back from decorating the Press Hotel penthouse with a bunch of flowers for a wedding tomorrow. So
That's awesome.
it looks so pretty and it's such a cold, rainy, it's coming down in sheets here in Maine. It's
It
windy and it's
is.
rainy. And so it was a great day to play with flowers.
Yeah, and I could tell from your attitude, you got that energy from it. So that is very cool. And we
Mhm.
can all use that. But today we're going to be talking about cutting back perennials,
Yep.
moving the tender ones in, dahlia tuber extraction,
Love that.
leaf mulch, and taking the leaves to raking the leaves, excuse me, but taking the leaves too,
Taking raking.
to protect your lawn. And then
Like
fall is great for nursery sales and getting big plants. So let's talk about cutting back perennials.
All right, great. So for our fellow listeners that have been tuning in over the weeks that we do this, because we do this every week,
Yep.
we've been talking a lot about bringing in annuals or herbs that you want to overwinter. But now that we've got a couple frosts under our belts, and certainly after all of this really harsh wind and rain, it's a great time to cut back your perennials. So this is any kind of like daylilies, lilies that you have, Solomon seal, any kind of just perennial that you have in
Yep.
your yard.
Yep.
Cut that right back to the base. Obviously, if there's something specific that you're wondering about, go ahead and look up that growing information online. But generally speaking, perennials like peonies, you're going to cut right down to the base. Um, and anytime I go out and I cut my perennials, it also reminds me that it's the perfect time to plant bulbs too. So even though we're cutting back our perennials, it's also a great time to start thinking forward thinking about next season. And that ties into one of the last topics that we'll talk about today, which is hitting up your nursery sales right now for some big pieces that you wouldn't otherwise splurge on. But while you're cutting back your perennials, take note of how big that mature plant was this year, cut it back, and then think about where you might want to drop in some early spring bulbs before that plant gets nice and big. You can drop in some early lupin seeds, but now's a great time to start sprinkling things like lupin, poppy, and transplanting any bulbs that you want for spring.
So going back to perennials, and you said cut them right back in most cases, and of course, check online. Um, and here in Maine, it is October 14th. And we're in zone 5B. Is that
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
So it's cold today. It's been getting much colder. So people that are listening in other areas, you're going to want to wait a little bit. And is there any other with the perennials in this time of year, root development, and are you going to shock them too soon? Is there
Sure.
anything like that?
Great question. Great question. There are certain reasons why you would want to cut back now, and other reasons why you would want to maybe wait even a month.
Yeah.
So, with the dahlias, I like to dig up my dahlia tubers. Once they've been hit by frost, I let them cure in the ground for 2 weeks.
Okay.
So, they get hit by frost. I don't go out the next day and dig those up. What I do is I cut back the plant so there's about a foot of stem left,
Okay.
and the bulbs in the stem will continue to cure in the ground. The plant is dead once the dahlia is hit by frost. It goes from being gorgeous to being dead. It's
Yeah.
brown. It's not subtle. And so what you can do is just cut back that stem so there's about a foot left and the tubers are still in the ground, but let those cure, I'd say 2 weeks to a month. People
Okay.
are like, oh my gosh, are the tubers going to rot? No, they've been in the ground now for like a solid 5 months. They're not going to rot by being in the ground for two weeks. They're going to cure, and so those I wait to dig up. Other perennials that I cut back, like I love peonies. My peonies this year, I did notice they started to get some powdery mildew on them, so I wanted to cut that back. And guys, this is so important. I noticed a lot of powdery mildew this year on lilac bushes, on peony bushes,
Yeah.
and those are early season plants. Now that you're cutting those things back and they have been exposed to powdery mildew, do not put those in your compost pile. This is super duper important.
Yep.
Those spores will live in soil and compost and will continue to grow into your soil if you put it in there. So once you cut back, there's a huge hedge of lilacs I need to trim back that were affected with powdery mildew. And those are going in a contractor bag and into the trash. So unfortunately, we cannot compost or should not compost things that have bacterial spores like powdery mildew in them. Same with blight.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We have a bunch of videos on planting dahlia tubers. And I don't know if we did something on harvesting the bulbs.
We do. Yeah, we have a cool one. Autumn's in that one with us. But we do have a dahlia tuber dig up video, and we can post that again. But we also have a great video about planting tulips and garlic together to overwinter. That's a great video we did with Mary Post. And with that video, it shows how garlic helps to keep things like deer away from tulip bulbs.
Yeah, we got to pull those up, and I got to put those out there too. So that's awesome. So I always have to go in and look. See, my mind doesn't pull that information as quickly as yours. So
we're doing great. We're doing great.
So we've also got to talk about moving in the tender perennials.
Yeah, so if there are some perennials that you loved that you want to bring in, go ahead and bring them in if you're worried about them. If it's a perennial and it's in the right zone and you planted it appropriately, you really don't have to fuss about it. The best thing you can do for a perennial is to put mulch on it and to overwinter it. The best mulch that I love for fall is a leaf mulch because it's free here in Maine.
Oh,
As
yeah.
you can see by the leaves and the coming down and the sheets of torrential rain behind me.
Yes.
What I do for that is I just rake up a bunch of leaves or pay my kids to, and then I drive over it with the lawnmower and just get it chopped up into a nice, beautiful leaf mulch and pile that onto your garden. If you cut back everything appropriately and remove all of those dead vines, all of those tomatoes and cucumbers and cherry 100s that have fallen in the soil, go ahead and rake those off. The reason why it's nice to rake that stuff out and not let it just like, oh, it'll decompose in the garden, it's compost, is because it's not compost when it's breaking down singularly like that. Like, sure, you could say that one tomato would leach into the soil and maybe add some nutrients, but you don't want that. What it can do is it can harbor bacteria in the soil and not break down appropriately when it's not combined with the other microorganisms of the compost pile, if you will. So it's always best to rake that stuff out.
Yes, it is. And when you're composting on a small scale, it's hard to get the piles to heat up. You need to do a lot of turning. So that's another reason why. When we compost on a large scale, those compost piles heat up to over 131 degrees. Things break down. So it's a different process than at home than it is, professionally on a large scale too.
Definitely. And I'll just say from a home grower perspective, I got lazy a couple seasons ago and I didn't clear out. I have these elevated raised beds, which are great for planting, not having to bend over. I got lazy. I didn't clear everything out. I kind of let it sit in there. And then I planted pansies and stuff in the spring. And that soil in the base, what happened was the bases of those plants became infected with a fungus. And because I didn't clear everything out of the soil to begin with. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It's a garden. It's still outside. But do what you can to remove vines, fruit, any kind of produce that's in the soil. Get that stuff out of there.
Well, we always know that nothing has to be perfect in your garden, right?
Exactly. Nothing
has to be perfect with your kids. I'm surprised that you're paying your kids.
Hugs and like Roblox.
That astounds me. And then the thing that you said about being lazy, I just haven't seen that. So, that kind of shocked me too. Mm-hmm. But we've also got this time of year, and you mentioned it earlier, and I mentioned it too, is it's time to take advantage of what garden centers may have left over, maybe putting on deep sales,
Yeah.
go to your local garden center. Tell me about that.
This jazzes me up because I know there are people like me out there who love going to garden centers and walk around, and you just think about pieces that you would like to have, but you're not necessarily going to like splurge on that weeping cherry
Right.
willow that you wanted.
Yep.
Now's a great time to do it. A lot of nurseries have their end of season sales right now before we get into the holiday season. And so get to your, and they're not going to be there forever. It very much
Right.
is a time thing. There is a point in time when nurseries have to get rid of the plants that they have and move in the Christmas trees and the wreaths and things like that. So it's also a great time to just like have a relationship with your local garden centers. It's so nice when you can walk into your local garden center, which is usually owned by a local family, and you get to like just converse with the people there, because generally speaking, the people that work at garden centers love being there and love talking about plants and love talking to people that like plants. And so if you go in there and you say, you know, I'm planning for next year, I have this open space in my front yard, what do you think would be there? And what do you have for sale? Most likely it's going to be for sale, and you'd be able to get a little bit of a head start if you got it in the ground now in mid-October. You've still got like a month worth of decent weather for that to set roots.
Well, I
Depending
also,
on what you got.
yeah, I mean, in that piece when you describe, because it is common across all these independent garden centers that they have long-term employees. They have employees that may know exactly your house and may have even noticed what you need and that you didn't rake or you
Uh-huh.
didn't. No, that's what everybody noticed about my house. I couldn't go anywhere because I was like, okay, I don't want to talk about that. But you know, the piece there, that passion, that experience, knowing what is perfect locally, take advantage of it and go there. And they love when people come by and ask questions and you know, want to become more knowledgeable and understand what they're doing in their own backyard. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and when you go to your garden center too, just we've been talking a lot about bringing some herbs or annuals in or succulents in that
Yep.
you want. Like I was at my garden center yesterday because they were having a 30% off shrub sale. And so I went there yesterday and I got 2 bags of the 2 cubic square foot Bar Harbor mix. I have been going through the Bar Harbor mix like crazy because I've been bringing so many things in this year. My mudroom is full of all kinds of plants, and I'm officially the crazy plant lady, but it makes me happy. So, whatever. And so, all I'm saying is to get you through the winter with a good attitude, make sure you have a little stash of potting soil so that when you need a little like pick me up, you can just go to your garage or wherever you need to, someplace to play with dirt and soil and plant and play with your plant friends.
Well, that's the therapy session, right? Getting
Exactly.
away from things, being able to connect even when it's in the winter.
Yeah.
That's beautiful stuff. So have we forgotten anything today on what we were going to talk about? Did we hit?
No, I threw in a little extra by talking about planting bulbs, but no, we over covered.
Well, we'll also have to pull out those videos and post some of those at the same time. I'm glad you were.
Yeah, what we'll do for one of our garden walks, I think 2 weeks from now, is we can actually split a tuber, you know,
Yep.
together over our call. And I love splitting tubers. I love dividing them and helping people figure out what works for them to be able to store them. I've had incredible success. I stored over 3,600 dahlia tubers last season in my garage. So I'm happy to show you guys how to do it. It's
Yeah.
easy and we don't use vermiculite. And so I'll show you how to do it. Stay
But
tuned for the next.
all right. All right, Steph, go and be lazy. No. Have a great weekend. We'll see everybody next week.
Thank
Thank
you. Bye, Cameron.
you.